Okay, Nick and Andy, huge game coming up in the FA Cup third round this weekend. By the way, this is one of my favourite weekends of the season. Love the FA Cup third round and all the matchups we get with fourth-tier teams playing against Premier League teams, etc. Cannot wait to cover that over on Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com. But the big focus, holders, Man United, heading to Arsenal, who really need to get going again, by the way. Arsenal, they kind of just, I was at the game away at Brighton recently, just drifting through games, relying on set pieces to try and drag themselves over the line. Nick, they lost to your Newcastle in midweek in the League Cup, and quite convincingly as well. Arteta's blaming the ball for that a little bit. There's a different ball for the FA Cup as well, right? So we might be struggling again with a different type of ball they'll be using. But I guess the big issue right now of Arsenal, like I mentioned, creativity, right, in terms of on the pitch. So they're really good at set pieces, but they kind of have to switch their focus elsewhere, right, to get this season back on track.
Yeah, I might suggest scoring first. And I haven't done the math on this at all, but I saw it was crazy. Newcastle were up 2-0. And honestly, it could have been 2-1. It could have been it was a good game. It was fun to watch. But at one point they subbed in Miguel Almiron, and he flashed this to his keeper in the backs, 5-5. And it was over. And you knew it was over. Because Arsenal, like we saw at City in the past, they've struggled to break down teams without Bukayo Saka. And I just don't know right now that their confidence is in a place where they can do that. So yeah, the key here is you're at home, you're playing a team that isn't defensively sound at the moment. Score.
Just go for it early, right? I mean, it sounds easy, but that's what they've been doing throughout most of the last few seasons. And I think it's that respect level, right? Like everybody's respected what they've been building the last couple of years, but now there's a very clear game plan against Arsenal. If you're playing against them, it's just bunker in, do what you have to do to try and, keep a shutout if you can, and then try and hit them on the counter. And we saw Brighton do that recently. We've seen teams get a lot of joy making the most of Arsenal's fullbacks going forward and joining in the attacks. And obviously, we know Odegaard being out recently was a huge blow. They're much better when he's come back. But then Saka, as soon as Odegaard arrives, Saka's out injured for a few months. So, Andy, we talked about it before. They've been unlucky with injuries this season. So can we put it all on that in terms of those two players? Are we seeing an over-reliance on Saka and Odegaard from Arsenal? Because they really haven't been injured the last 2 years, have they?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think it's something we talked about last year. There's an overuse issue going on at Arsenal, but I don't think it's just two players. I think it's the first 11 or 12 or 13 guys. And still, we talked about it last season. No offense to us, if we're smart enough to pinpoint this as a potential issue and talk about it multiple times in a public domain throughout a season, then you think the people running the football club probably also could see this and say, all right, there's going to be a time this year where there's a lot of guys that are going to run out of gas at about the same point. And it's not just the ones that are out injured at the moment. It's the players that are on the field that are well below par of what we expect from them, from what we saw from them last season when they were at their best. And so, this is part of the cycle of becoming an elite team in the world. Is it takes a lot of work to get there. And I think maybe that's what Arsenal are learning at this point. And it is a young squad still. We've kind of moved on from that, but to be at this point and to really push to get into that elite tier, it's a whole other level, and you need some depth. You don't see teams playing 13, 14 players get to that point.
What about the ball, Andy? What about the ball?
Yeah.
It is a mitre ball, a different ball in the FA Cup this weekend. So it's mitre. It's very different. So we're going to wait and see what kind of statement Arteta makes on the ball after the game. But let's wait and see for that. I mean, the final point I want to make on Arsenal is that they have rotated a bit more in recent weeks and months, but that's been out of basic necessity. That's not a choice that Arteta's made. I think it's just basically because they haven't had players fit and available, and they have to keep that core fit somehow.
And haven't they had a couple players come into the first team and look pretty good and have made themselves part of the first team going forward as well? It's, even if it's forced, you have to continually be building that squad. And they just haven't. They have stayed still for a couple of years now. And to me, that's the biggest issue with Arsenal.
Yeah, like Lewis Skelly's come in and done well. Obviously, I think one of the main ones is Gabby Jesus in recent weeks, scored a few more goals. But
Mm.
yeah, it just feels a bit clunky right now of Arsenal. So they need a couple of big wins. And they're still well in the Premier League title race in my book, just behind Liverpool. Champions League is going well. Obviously, League Cup not as well. But, they're there. It's not bad. They just need to find some more energy, it feels like. In the turn of the year, which isn't easy given how many games they have coming up in all those competitions. Nick, Man United, we should really talk about them because morale boosting draw, nearly a win. It wouldn't have been a win if Harry Maguire would have tucked that away because Xerxes was offside, but still much, much better performance-wise, whatever the result was against Liverpool. Showed a bit of guts, right? And like the benchmark of what it has to be under Amorim. And I kind of liked that he was really angry after the game. He was like, you know what? I deserve to be angry. He's like, most of the, performances haven't been good enough. Why can we do this here against Liverpool, the best team in the Premier League right now, and put in some of the other performances where they lost? So kind of like the way he's set in the stool here, that to be kind of the grouchy old man in the corner that's like, well, you played well, but I expect better from you anyway. His standards are high. Can Man United match them? This Man United match them consistently? Because the odd performance, we know that they can do this, right? Against City, against Liverpool, in big cup games. They've done this over the last few years. So I don't know if we really learned too much about them in that draw at Liverpool. That's what I'm trying to say. What do you think?
Well, I think it's interesting that Maguire has played more. Not because I think he's better than the player he's playing over, but because he does care. There's never been a question that Harry Maguire cares. He liked being captain of that club. Bruno Fernandes cares. The other guys, largely on a week-to-week basis, are either young and they're still getting to know the club, or they're young and they just think they have it because they're at Manchester United. And I think that's the Rashford and Garnacho difference. I think that's initially why they might have been frozen out a little bit. And they need more people. This is a club, right? Any top club in England can buy a kid, if the system's good, can buy a kid like Lenny Yoro, and he can come start even at that tender age. He can't do that at Manchester United because he's looking around for help. I mean, he is. And I just don't think he's gotten that. Delo, I might want to include in there too. There's effort from him every day. And I think Mazraoui is actually a pretty excellent player who seems to care as well. But there isn't that everybody is fighting thing, and now we saw it. And now Bruno says, I'm in the transfer window. I thought I was going to have to buy a bunch of guys. I still probably do. But you're showing me this. And Bruno said the same thing. And no one's going to accuse Bruno Fernandes of not caring. So I just think that the culture there right now is shifting, and we can't expect it to shift enough to see that much consistency, but we can expect it to continue on an upward trajectory.
Yeah, it's true.
But upward.
Yeah, this is their trophy. They hold it right now. Andy, they're kind of a cup team, so it wouldn't really surprise me if they went to Arsenal and won this weekend, given, the way we've talked about Arsenal will have a lot of possession, will probably be quite similar to the Liverpool game, and United can press them high and win the ball back. And then they have Amad Diallo, maybe Garnacho if he comes in the team. They have these counter-attacking threats that seem to match up pretty well against Arsenal. I was at a game a few months ago when Amorim first came in, where United lost 2-0 at Arsenal in the league. But they were in it, but they couldn't quite figure out in the final third how to sustain attacks. Dangerous from set pieces, a few of them. And it was a close game, but they've obviously had ups and downs since then. The latest being an up with that point away at Liverpool. But prediction-wise, I mean, what are you thinking for this one? Because I don't know if Arsenal really need the FA Cup. Is that weird to say? Like, they're focused on the Champions League and getting back in the title race. Maybe this is one game where Arteta does rotate quite heavily to protect some of those key players.
Yeah, maybe we could string them up against, obviously, Arsenal here. We can get City, Chelsea, Newcastle next in the Cup. If we can put them against these big teams, they'll care. Maybe they do go on a run here. It's going to be tough, I think, just for the fact that they have to go away and having been very, very busy of late to keep that momentum up the way that they've been doing, I think it's going to be a challenge at Arsenal. I'll go 2-1 Arsenal. Yeah, grinded out kind of victory for Arsenal. The type that you're not really happy you watched at the end of the game, probably. But for one of these teams, I do think it will be a big result, whichever way it goes.
I want to give some plaudits to Arteta in this way. I do not think he has rotated well prior to this point, and the lesson does seem to be learned. We saw a couple games ago where Odegaard, he was ill, but he didn't come in until the half-hour mark, and guys have been rested. Declan Rice was rested. He didn't start a game that he probably in any other situation would, and so I do think he's figuring that out. And I just want to give him his love for that. I do think they'll find a way to win this game at home. I think home FA Cup still means something to, especially the English players. And I would expect a big day from a Declan Rice in the middle of the park. And I'm going to call it 3-1.
Okay. I'm going the same scoreline as Andy, but I'm going to go for Man United to win 2-1. I don't know. I just think the extra day's rest that United are going to have compared to Arsenal playing in the League Cup in midweek, how stretched Arsenal are, kind of a bit low on confidence. And up top, I just don't feel confident right now in Arsenal when they're going through on goal. And United just look a bit dangerous and kind of a wounded animal at the moment to me as a team. And I think this kind of comes at a good time for them and to prove themselves a little bit. And going for a bit of a cup set, as we would say here in England. So Arsenal against Manchester United, big FA Cup third round game coming up this weekend. Head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. We'll have live analysis, reaction, and much more for a massive game between two giants of English football early on in the FA Cup.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host of NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And if you want even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock.